far. I'm going to mention
Oh
that.
no, there we go. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you. I was so specific about it, so I don't know if I clicked and I didn't press the buttons right or something, but
I don't know.
I was there. I was there.
Um, I have been, I've had a really interesting last few days. I've been thinking a lot about various things.
Let's see.
But
Let's see.
I have been, so I think I told you guys on Tuesday that I was continuing to think about feelings and that was kind of a continuation of the previous week, and my exercise that I was
Mm,
sort of following this week was to be paying attention to sort of particularly strong emotions or feelings or experiences that I was having this week,
mm,
and
mm,
to kind of
mm,
tie that back to what thought and belief was this related to. And my
mm,
big
mm,
my
mm.
big aha from earlier, which I shared on Tuesday, was that I realized that awareness alone is often not um,
Yes.
the only thing that leads to sustained change in behavior and in experience. That
Yes.
um,
Yes.
because
Correct. Yes.
just because our belief
Yes.
and our
Yes.
awareness has changed doesn't mean that the habits that were associated to that belief instantly change with it. It's something that, it's
Exactly.
kind of like the neurological pathways in our brain. They don't just instantly rewire, they have to become rewired
Right.
through
Right.
repeated
Yeah.
consistency. And so that's been such a huge thing. I've continued to think about that. And
The liberation is needed to rewire.
right. And it's
Emphasis.
okay, and it's totally normal for those old behaviors to continue to come up even though you have a different belief. It doesn't mean that I'm failing. It doesn't mean that I don't understand as much as I think I do. It's just that's part of the process, and that's what happens with habits. They get ingrained, and we just have to continue to replace every time it comes up. So continue to think about that. It's been a really big thing for me over the last few days. Um, and then I've been I've continued listening to Dr. Shafali's book, and there have been a lot of interesting things that have come up out of that have sort of prompted me to be thinking about different things. And so part of what she's talking about in the spot that I'm listening to is about expectations and placing expectations on children and the repercussions of that. And I went back and looked at the entries that I had in my journal of the first day of recording, things that, really stood out to me in terms of emotions or reactions or responses. And basically all of them tied into expectation. At the root of it, it was I had a reaction because of a belief that that I had that was really an expectation about how things were going to go. And so I've been thinking a lot about expectations over the last 2 days. And that's been a really interesting,
That's
journey.
fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey so far. Mom and I have had a lot of really interesting, good conversations about expectations. And I started paying attention yesterday to, one of the things that I was saying to Mom, I wrote this down somewhere. I have so many different notes that I make in different places, and then I end up getting lost with where I was.
No problem. Take your time. Take your time.
The things I was thinking about was I was recognizing that expectation, I discovered that expectation was kind of at the root of all of the things that I wrote down, but both good and bad experiences that I had written down kind of came back to expectation. And I was saying to mom yesterday, it struck me that we are like biologically hardwired as human beings to develop and create expectations. That's sort of how we move through the world, is by being pattern recognizing machines. And we figure, we observe everything around us, we look for patterns, we use those patterns to create a strategy. We are basically looking at everything around us to use kind of statistically analyze what's happening around us, and then create an expectation of behavior in the future based on what we've seen in the past. That is how we survive. That is what we are doing innately, often without even thinking about it. And so it's natural to me, it makes total sense that expectation literally rules our lives for, I think, most of our moment to moment experiences. It's expectation. And it makes it really hard to sort of step back into appropriate expectations while also being present in the moment and not just solely focusing on what our expectations are of the future. And we were talking about, appropriate expectations, and how it is appropriate to look at a situation, to kind of analyze what's happening, to make a best guess of what's going to be the most appropriate thing for us to do. That's, expectations, when they are appropriate, are sort of, I think for me, part of what help determine what is appropriate. It's based on our past experiences and what we expect is going to happen in the future. But the trouble is when we get completely mired in the expectation and we don't leave room for the possibility of more. And I was saying to mom yesterday that to me is like trusting without trusting, believing. It is having appropriate expectations of future behavior based on past experience, while also leaving room for the possibility of moreness. And I was saying, that was one of the things that's interesting to me about trust in the process of making choices, that when we're making impeccable choices, we are, I don't know who is, I assume that was Syl that dropped. There's a lot of that happening all over the world. Interesting.
Yes, Syl's connection is dropping. So please continue. He will come.
Anyway, so it's interesting to me, the role of that in making choices, that we make an impeccable choice based on the information available to us at the time. But when we're keeping in mind that there is always the possibility, there is always more, and we have to account for that possibility of, and really the reality of, there being more that we don't know about and that we don't yet understand. That is where the trust comes in that sequence, that we make an impeccable choice, but understanding that there is more that we aren't privy to, that we're not aware of yet. And so that trust is necessary in that part of the process, because we're saying, I trust that there is more, that there is something that there is information out there that I don't have access to at this point. Yes. And I trust that the universe has an intent to goodness. So whatever that more is that I'm not aware of, it's going to be working for good. So I'm trusting, I've made this decision, I've made an impeccable decision, but I know that there is more that I'm not aware of. And I know that that more is goodness. So the last part of this process is me trusting in that. Yes. And I think that is a really fascinating. I mean, we were walking along. There's lots of noises going on here. So sorry. No worries. We were walking along yesterday, and that just hit me that is trusting without trusting and believing without believing. It's trusting the information that we have available to us right now, and understanding that expectations, appropriate expectations, and recognizing patterns is how we learn. That's how we strategize. It is appropriate, but it's not appropriate to be 100% completely mired in that existence and not consider the moreness that is there outside of our current capability to understand or perceive. So that was a really interesting part of the discussion for me with thinking about expectations. And then let's see, what else did I have here?
Before you connect, I find it really fascinating how we, in a way, are redoing ways of development, but from a whole different plateau and different perspective, right? So you're focused on expectations, but when you look at expectations, aren't expectations just in the way you mention them now, insidious, very, very sneaky habits?
Right. Absolutely.
Very sneaky, very insidious habits, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Horrible habits, these expectations, those default habits, those default expectations, I should say, right? It's a terrible habit, is it not?
Absolutely. Do you have to build quicker things? Okay. Sarah, go lie down. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think it is easy for expectation without the consideration of moreness to become habit. That, when we get into the habit of expecting things based on past experience and not accounting for or leaving room for the moreness, that's a difficult habit to get out of, I think, for sure.
Yes. What makes habits so difficult is that habits are by default associated with unawareness and undeliberateness.
Right. True.
That's their trick.
True.
That's why when we develop the habit of consciously changing our routines, just for the hell of changing them, it's not to change them. It is to develop the habit of being conscious of those default unaware moments.
Yeah, I think that was the really interesting part to me of what I was thinking about the other day, that the habit that I have developed now may have been tied to an initial awareness a long time ago, but it no longer really has anything to do with awareness or the belief that created the habit in the first place. That it's fascinating to me that I can come to a new awareness and a new belief, but the habit, the behavior that was tied to the old belief continues to go forward, even though that belief no longer exists, because at that point the habit really has nothing to do with the belief anymore. It's become an intrinsically ingrained behavior that I'm not doing consciously anymore. It just has developed over time. So that was one of the really powerful things for me the other day, was realizing just because I have a different awareness and I've changed my belief doesn't mean that the behavior just immediately changes, because the behavior has now kind of disassociated from the belief, and that's something separate that I need to go about changing in a different way.
I just feel like you're staring into space over there, so I'm going to see how much difference the video makes.
Okay.
It just seems kind of not right. So anyway.
Well, it's all good. I don't mind either way, but I appreciate it. So then this morning I kept going with expectations. That was still coming up for me, and I was listening to more of Dr. Shefali, and
one second. I keep forgetting to ask you, because I don't want to interrupt you, but I have to. Will you message me her name, please? I want to read it.
Yes, yes. I
Yeah.
need to find, she always just goes by Dr. Shafali, and I need to find her last name because I never remember what it is since she always just says Dr. Shafali.
It's harder than
Oh,
Shafali.
that was nice. That's all the more reason to ask then.
So,
Very interesting.
okay,
Oh.
so I'll send you her name and the name of the book that I'm reading right now, which is so good. I haven't read her first book, but I assume it's fairly similar. But yeah, I'll send you.
And while we're on watching and listening, I'm keen to hear your perspectives and thoughts on Ted Lasso.
Oh yes, yeah. We'll have to go into that for sure.
It's that is.
Okay. So did you find value in that?
I did. I want to continue on my train of thought with the expectations because
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, another time.
that I don't want to forget about, but I will for sure come back to the Lasso thing.
Yeah. All right, cool.
The Awakened Family. There we go. Okay, so this is her name and the name of the book that I'm reading right now.
See, that's why I wanted to see it. I thought it would be a CH, but
yeah, no, SH. And it's so funny. She has a really beautiful voice, and her voice reminds I've been listening to the Audible version of her book, and she narrates it, and her voice reminds me a lot of your voice, Beena. She has a really similar kind of musical tone to her voice. It's really pretty. I love listening to her.
Yeah.
So today I was thinking more about expectations again, and I was listening to Dr. Shafali again this morning, and went in a different direction with expectations that was really interesting, and it brought me back around to the topic of capital L love, which was really interesting. So I just started, since I had my journal and had been, I've been like physically writing in my journal this week. I just sat down and started writing. So I guess I'll just read what I wrote.
Oh, fabulous.
I would love to discuss and get your opinions on this, but it was just an interesting train of thought. So I said, I'm continuing to think about expectations today. I listened to more of Dr. Shafali this morning, and she was speaking about potential. She said that instead of seeing potential as future-centric, we can recognize the perfection of now and all of our current power, which can lead to future growth. She was talking about breaking down the word potential and looking at potent, and that potent or potency kind of insinuates that something is currently powerful. Its potency doesn't really have anything to do with the future, it's current state. And so if we see potential as something that's rooted in current potency, which provides for future growth, but it doesn't mean that, it's completely forward, future centric, that it gives a totally different perspective on potential. She was talking specifically about our children, and when you're saying, oh, they have so much potential, or you didn't live up to your potential, that instead switch to this concept of seeing your current capabilities and current power.
Yes, exactly.
So I said, go ahead.
We're talking about this with the acorn and innateness. It's a long story, but the oak tree is innate to the acorn. However, to become the oak tree, the acorn doesn't focus on being an oak tree. It focuses on being an acorn.
Right. Yeah. That's a lot along the lines of where I went in this whole thing. So I said, kind of along those lines, I am always enough, and yet I can always be more. We exist in a space of simultaneous perfection and possibility. Release expectation, embrace what is, and leave room for what could be. Isn't that also what gratitude is? Making use of and seeing or getting value in what currently is, while leaving space for more. Isn't that also what love is? seeing the current perfection of and
Mm.
possibility of moreness in all things. Love transmutes, it alchemizes. In order to turn lead into gold, we must recognize that lead currently possesses everything it needs to be gold. It recognizes that lead in its current state is both perfect, already in possession of all possible needs, goodness, and potential, while also recognizing that this perfection means that it can also always be more. This recognition is what allows love to transmute. Love is seeing something fully for all that it is and all that it can be. Love is seeing the moreness of something and seeing its current perfection simultaneously. Whoops. These are one and the same. The perfection of now is moreness, and moreness is the perfection of now. Love sees that iron is already more because it possesses all the properties of perfection. It doesn't need to be outwardly recognized as gold in order to be perfect or to be more. It already is. Iron is perfect in any form because of what it is made of. Each form is appreciated for its particular appropriateness, but none is better than another at its root. Each may be more appropriate in a given circumstance, but all are more. All contain the same elements. This is why expectation doesn't make sense for me, because expectation and potential insinuate the coming of something more as if it is not already here. Isn't that what we do through choice? Simply rearrange all of the perfect elements of life, of existence, to make them appropriate for us. Is that the purpose of life, to explore all the endless possibilities and combinations of moreness by making choices and then making more again, experimenting and enjoying the perfection of each variance? Isn't learning, growing, strategizing, etc., simply considering more possible arrangements of perfection? Putting things together in appropriate ways and then exploring the possibilities of these new forms. Isn't this the beauty of difference? That we are all made of the same elements, but rearranged in unique and interesting forms. And that's as far as I got.
I like it.
But I've been thinking about that a ton. Whoops. You're roboting.
Yeah.
Still can't hear you if you're trying to talk.
Yeah. So wait a minute, because
Go, Beena.
yeah. So just
Go,
wait.
Beena, go.
No, just wait for a minute and then start talking, because it is lagging.
So I was just saying, wow, that's all.
We were having a whole sentence, or I don't know, whatever it was.
Well, I did say I want to yell at it again, but I was
Okay.
fabulous.
Yes.
Oh dear.
Yes.
Yeah, basically, I think what I've been thinking about today is, I mean, that was an interesting reflection for me, that love is not only seeing the moreness of something or seeing the possibility of something that could be, but also seeing the current perfection. And that those are one and the same. That current perfection is moreness, and moreness is current perfection. It is the current perfection is what allows for moreness.
Yeah.
And moreness is what allows for current perfection, that it's one and the same. And that is what allows love to be this transmuting energy, that it is the recognition that all of the elements are the same, always. Lead contains all of the same elements of gold, and no matter what form that takes on, the elements are all still there. So it's all perfect. Every form that it takes on is perfect. And at that point,
Exactly.
the only difference is just the appropriateness of each form. So if I want to make a tool that I'm going to use to hammer something, it's probably better to use lead than gold because lead has harder properties. If I'm trying to do something that I need to, like, you know, I mean, I think in The Alchemist, they were transmuting lead into gold because they needed money. They needed something that carried more monetary value. So in that case, gold was more appropriate. It's not any better than lead. It's literally the same thing. It's made out of the same elements. It's just taking on a different form. So that was a really interesting thought to me, of recognizing that we, you know, kind of going back to the whole concept of happiness and the state of being where you already have everything that you need and want. I already am everything that I could possibly ever be. I already am that right now. I am perfect right now. Whatever I become that is appropriate and rooted in moreness and goodness is perfect, will be perfect. I simultaneously contain perfection in the now and perfection in the future, perfection in all possible forms, outcomes. And it's just about exploring what's appropriate. You know, I can change forms and grow and learn and explore and pursue moreness from the perspective of just being appropriate. But it doesn't mean that making those changes literally changes who I am or what I am or how
Exactly.
I am. I am always made of the same elements of goodness forever. I always have been, I always will be. That does not change. So I am already perfect at this particular moment.
Exactly.
The moreness is just pursuing all of the endless, boundless possibilities of combinations of those elements that create something new and cool and interesting, and exploring the appropriateness of that thing and appreciating the particular form of that thing. But it's not any better or any worse than any other form, because at the root, it's still made of the same things. It's all made of the same things. So that's, I don't know, that's been a really interesting
I like it.
thought process for me today of thinking about the perfection of now, you know, sort of appreciating the perfection of now and leaving room for the moreness that is.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay.
Magical. 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 Powerful stuff. Are you hearing me?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, this is so.
I say that, and
this is our purpose.
That's working on people.
I heard this is our purpose. That was the last thing I heard.
Yes, in the project, this is our purpose, is to make sense of the world by ourselves, consciously, deliberately, with our own tools.
Right.
Yes? Yeah. It's very magical. Very magical. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good things to talk about on our walk too.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it's, I don't know, it's just, it's interesting. And it was interesting. I had no expectation that where this thought process was going to go was going to lead back to love again. But that was a really, it kind of surprised me that that's what came up. But I think it's such an interesting balance of, it's sort of this simultaneous existence, and yet it's not really simultaneous, because simultaneous sort of indicates separation or you know, non-cohesiveness or whatever, and that really it's one and the same. The perfection of now is moreness is the perfection of now, that they beget each other. that's, you know, perfection is what allows for moreness and vice versa. That's I don't know. It's just it's a really interesting thought. And so I'm going to continue exploring it, but I was thinking, you know, I was thinking about The Alchemist, obviously, and what they were talking about with lead and gold, and I was thinking about like water, you know, when water changes to gas or ice or whatever, that it still contains the same properties. It doesn't magically, like, all of a sudden, you know, gain some different property. It's all the same elements. They're just being rearranged. They're rearranged in a way that it creates a new form. And water is always at its root the same core elements. You know, it's the same thing. It's just that a force, which in this case, I think, you know, we're talking about us, is love, provides the energy that creates this change and creates a new form. But ice is no better than water, which is no better than steam. It's all the same thing. It's all the same elements. The only difference is the appropriateness of it. You know, it may be more appropriate at a certain time to be ice or to be water or to be steam, but they're all perfect. They're all the same elements. No one, they're not better, you know, one is not better than another. They're literally the same thing. They're made of the same things. And I was thinking about that with us, you know, with people, and about differences and sort of embracing difference and releasing expectations of who other people think we should be, or that I should do this or do that. That at our core, we are all the same. We are all made of the same elements. The difference is how they're arranged. You know, we are all unique arrangements of the same basic elements of goodness and appropriateness. There are some interesting noises happening back here. And so isn't that a beautiful thing, that at the root, we were all created by the same creator. You know, we all come from the same place. We are all rooted in the same perfection, in the same goodness. We're all made of the same elements. We're just rearranged in a really unique and interesting way. And how cool is that? That in each person, we get to see, wow, you know, that's a really cool arrangement. Here's how these pieces fit together. Wow, look at this. That's a really cool arrangement. They're not any better or worse than me. It's just different. It's just a different reorganization of the elements that make up me. And isn't that cool that we get to see that, and we can see what's appropriate and
fantastic.
What's appropriate for me.
Celebrate the difference.
Absolutely. It truly is a celebration, because to me, you know, as I was thinking this through this morning, isn't that what we are doing with our life? Everything that exists now has always existed for all of time, and life is just a rearrangement.
Exactly.
Of these basic elements. And isn't that cool that we get to do that? We get to experience through choices, we get to rearrange. We get to make these unique combinations of things in our expression, in our environment, of us. And that's what this is about, is exploring and rearranging and combining and creating and tearing down and rebuilding and rearranging the same basic elements into new and different things, and studying that and appreciating it and looking at what's appropriate about it and what maybe could be changed. And that's the whole point of this, is using our choices to affect change in a way that rearranges all of these things that are all rooted in good, that are all based in good, that we're all created from goodness, that all have an intent to goodness. We're just rearranging those molecules into new and different forms.
Absolutely.
None are any better than the other. They're all made of the same thing.
It's so
Exactly.
appropriate.
So would you say it exactly? That's the word that I was going to bring in.
It's breaking. So you bring that point about that you were thinking about death, and I was thinking about death and life also after that, and that was the thought in my mind, and I was continuously thinking about. And then I wrote that poem about cycle of life, which I named that. And for me, the whole concept of death and life was somehow summarized in that it is just
Appropriate perspective. Yeah.
this is about the arrangement and dismantling all the arrangements of the molecules and cells and everything. So this is something really amazing, because when you just bring that topic of death, and I start thinking about that, like what is death? What is death? And I shared with you about the Urdu poetry also, that someone says that life is just an arrangement of cells, and death is. So I was thinking about that also, and
Yeah.
it makes total sense to me that yes, we all are, because from where we start, actually, we all are intent, okay, intent of universe or whatever power, assume that.
Right.
And then the intent, and then reset the intent. This is just the process. The whole process is just setting and re-intending all these things.
Right.
But the core and the basic is same. Just, I think that through way of impeccability and the moreness lens, if we see that, we are moving forward from celebrating the difference, but also we are moving towards celebrating the sameness.
Right. Exactly. I agree. And that was one of the things I was thinking about this morning, was that's one of the things that's so cool about difference, is you're sort of simultaneously appreciating this unique arrangement of elements while also appreciating that it's the same elements that you're made of, that it's, you're the same and different at the same time. And that is really interesting.
Yeah. So
That's
to
fabulous.
say that we are
That's just
celebrating
beautiful.
the sameness within us. It is really cool.
Yeah.
Really. So you were saying something?
Very, very cool. Just saying it's fabulous, beautiful, cool. I'm just loving it. It's awesome. This awareness that, the magic is all around us, just for us to tap into it and connect to it. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
It's there. It's there for the taking.
Absolutely. It's very cool. It's definitely something I want to continue thinking about, but yeah, it's really interesting. And it is, I think, again, for me, it's amazing how all of this comes back to the universal overall intent to goodness that drives everything. That is how all of this makes sense, is that everything comes back to that, talking about being the same and also being different at the same time. That is the similarity that we share with everything else in this experience. That is rooted in intent.
Yes.
Please say it again, Erica.
Sure. That from the premise of celebrating difference while also recognizing sameness, that despite all of the varied differences, the unique arrangements of everything in this experience of life, the commonality that we all share with everything else in this experience is that it comes from an intent to goodness. We all come from an intent to goodness. Everything.
Yes.
And that is the commonality that we all share.
Yes.
That is what makes everything make sense.
Erica Jane.
Everything makes sense.
Yeah. Would you say that commonality, that essence, that common intent to goodness, that binding and similar element, would you say that is our godness?
Interesting. Could be, for sure.
Yeah, or it's just a way of looking at it.
Right. Yeah.
But that intent to goodness is that God element within us, no?
Right, right. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Very cool. Very cool. It's just a nice way of looking at it, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most awesome. Most awesome.
Writing something really quick.
Oh, take your time. Take your time.
Okay, got it. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. That's what I've been thinking about today. So yeah, very interesting thing.
Oh, I just love it. I just love it. Yeah. I do have something I wanted to share.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very exciting for me. That is very cool that I see or observe or feel. What you are sharing, and lately there's a difference. That to me, you are sharing what you've been thinking about,
Here we go.
what you've been doing, but also, I want to check my perception. In other words, it seems to me that this is what you are feeling as well.
Absolutely. That has been my big focus over the last.
It's a shift. It's a shift.
Yeah. And it's been, I mean, that has been my intent over the last 2 weeks, is really focusing on feeling and using feelings as attunement, to get to the thoughts, beliefs, all of the things behind that feeling, and sort of marrying all of those things together. So
yes. I mean it more in the sense that you are feeling your understandings,
right,
feeling your awarenesses, feeling your insights. They're not just an insight alone. Like this point of celebrating the difference, enjoying others, you're feeling it. It's an excitement. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And that's
Absolutely.
huge. That's one of our objectives that we are aiming towards, is to feel it all. Because if you don't feel it, there's no point to it, right? The world doesn't make any sense if you don't feel it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we want to make sense of things and then feel that making sense of it. Yeah.
Yes. For sure.
How fantastic is that? This is a major point. When we can start to feel our insights, feel our understandings, to celebrate the joy of this new awareness, that this awareness makes a functional difference in our life.
Absolutely.
It adds to how we feel, how we connect, how we resonate, how we interact. Yes?
For sure.
And that's it's like, I mean, can't you go any more huge than that? Not really. Right?
Absolutely.
Very powerful.
For sure. Yeah, that's interesting. I agree.
Very big deal. Very big deal. And to have this ability to, when we really think things through like this, when we understand them, when we conceive of them, when we cognize them, when we really get this depth of discernment and understanding and awareness and insight, to then feel it. So, man, this is making a difference in my life. This is making a positive, magical, awesome difference. Oh, this is special.
Absolutely.
Yes?
For sure.
Now, would you not say that is capital L, loving the world?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a big deal to me as well. We say it so casually, oh, that's loving the world. But man, the ability to actually really implement and apply that love of the world.
Right.
This is a beyond big deal. Yeah. We have the ability to do this 24/7, in other words. Yes. add something else. Add something else. Yeah,
Absolutely. I agree.
that's very cool.
I agree completely. Your journal.
That's a really, really, really big deal. It's a major shift, and one which perpetually making every effort to connect to facilitate connectivities to make an awareness to this. Because you can't give it or force it or do anything. You can just create the appropriate conditions which you hope it happens. But this is the purpose. This is the point of what we are doing, is to get to this point of feeling the world, feeling our insights, feeling our thoughts, feeling our beliefs, our choice of beliefs, our deliberate beliefs. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because if we don't feel it, no point. No point.
Right.
Yeah. Wow, Erica.
For sure.
Wow. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the seminar series.
Me too. You never know what's going to come. So
Exactly.
make room for the morness.
Important to understand, not have to come. It's not a given. It's not an expectation.
Right.
It's not an
Well, we lost you there.
right?
There we go. You're back. Sorry, lost you for a chunk there.
No problem. I was saying we do not have to do things simply because we can.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
It's nice to have the capability, and it may be fun to try it out every now and then just to see, yeah, I really can do this. Okay.
Right.
But I don't have to.
Right.
have to. This is absolutely
Current perfection.
this yes, and also potential. The trap of potential
Right.
can be a terrible, terrible trap.
Right.
Living up to your potential. It's one of the most massive stresses
Yep.
and horrors that many get subjected to. You do not have to live up to your potential. Simply know it's there, and if you choose to, fine. If you don't, fine. Either way, it's fine.
Right.
The object is to be happy, not to live up to your potential. Living up to your potential makes others happy, not necessarily you.
Sure.
Right?
For sure.
Very important point. Very important point. Kay was talking about the potential, and I don't know, but also somebody we're listening to, I believe, was talking about it. And for me, this is a big point. I feel it's a huge, huge point. This necessity to understand our potential can be a potential trap.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was Dr. Shafali was talking about that in the section I was reading of her book this morning. And yeah, that was really interesting that potential is an expectation, and it's she kept saying potential, we make potential completely future centric. So rather than recognizing the perfection of what exists right now, we're constantly focused on what could be, what should be, what might be. And so, change your view of potential of one that's in the future to recognizing the potency of what exists in the now. And I think that's so true. And that, that was where I was saying in the beginning of all of this, that for me, that is love, is recognizing that I am right now enough, yet I'm also more. And leaving that, recognizing and appreciating myself for who I am right now, and recognizing the perfection of who I am right now, and also recognizing that there is always more. So there's always that room for something, for change, for growth, for learning, But it's
Exactly.
not, it doesn't mean that that form that I'm taking is any better than who I am right now. It's just a rearrangement. It's just a different form. So yeah. I think that's good.
And when you say for change, for learning, for growth, are those also synonyms for excitement, for eagerness, for enthusiasm, for joy, for fun?
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
And
And when we make that association, that's when the world changes.
right. I think that is the thing, is for me, instead of learning, growth, change, all of these things being a necessity in order for us to become perfect or become enough or become more, it's recognizing that I already am perfect. I already am enough. I already am more. The basic elements of goodness already exist here in the perfect form.
Yes.
So this exploration of learning and growth and rearranging is something that I get to do. It's not a requirement. I'm already perfect as I am.
Yes.
And changing,
Yes. The icon is perfect.
changing and growing and learning and doing all of these things does not make me more perfect than I already am. It's just different. It's just a rearrangement. It's something.
Exactly.
It's something.
Exactly.
Something that's fun.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. This is the perfection of now. To
Right.
understand the perfection is a continuum. It's not a constant.
Right.
Perfection is an evolution. It's a change. It's a shift.
Absolutely.
I'm getting this
Especially
idea.
when we understand perfection of now. Oh, go ahead, Kate.
Oh, I'm listening over here and um, I'm just thinking more or moreness doesn't have to necessarily mean additional.
Right.
It
Correct.
just a different arrangement.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that. I keep having this picture in my mind. I have pattern blocks in my mind, and I have, that commercial. I don't know if you guys have this commercial, but and I don't even know what it's for, but it's matchsticks. And the matchsticks all change. You make pictures out of the matchsticks, and it makes all these different pictures, and they move around. Not you don't see the person moving them, but they move around. just I mean, I think for me, up until just now, I was thinking of moreness as being additional.
Right. And like better.
And
Right.
better.
Yeah.
And something that you need to achieve or that you need to
Right.
get somehow.
And that was what I was saying earlier, that for me, recognizing that I think it makes sense in the beginning when we're trying to grasp this, of thinking of perfection and moreness as two simultaneously existing things. But really, when you take it to the end, recognizing that it's the same thing. The perfection of now is moreness.
Right.
And moreness is the perfection of now. And they sort of
Coexist.
allow each other, to be,
Or
that it is
not
the
even
same.
coexist, but
It's the same thing. That moreness is not more perfect than
Right.
perfection. You can't. There is
Right.
nothing that is more perfect than perfection. And if perfection is what is currently happening
Exactly.
now, moreness is just additional perfection. It's not. It's not.
Variation. No.
It's a variation of perfection. Yeah. It's not. It's not
Yeah. Oh,
an additional thing.
interesting.
it's bonus.
Right.
Moreness is bonus. Share with Kay. I want Kay to hear that moreness is bonus. Please, Eric.
What now?
Okay. I said, please share with Kay that we can think of moreness as bonus.
Yeah, she did hear that.
But I don't think that's not how I'm thinking of it.
Oh.
Bonus also implies outside to me.
Right.
So we have to find your conception for moreness then.
Moreness is just sort of the understanding that perfection doesn't take a single form.
Right.
Yes. It's alternative perfection.
Yeah, perfection exists in infinite forms.
There you go.
Yes,
That-
yes, yes, yes,
Harness
yes.
the infinite forms of perfection.
There you go. Write that down.
Yeah, yeah. Also, Kay, you can say mourners is God.
Oh, absolutely.
True.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing. I mean, you know, most conceptions of God is that God is everything. God is the infinite. So, well, mourners is God. And, you know, a little God is, it's quite more than enough, right?
Yeah, your idea. Infinite.
Yeah. I mean, a little God is more than enough. But, hey, if you're going to get some, you can always get some more God, right? It doesn't matter. That's the genius of it. That's the magic of it, you know. So, yes, we tend to like variation. So, this is the magic of it. Gives us alternative ways, alternative perfection.
That, that book I'm reading about.
Okay.
You'll have to be the relay. We can't hear, okay?
I'm sorry, I'm over here.
She just said to remind her of you said a book?
Oh,
The book, Gardens Market.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, she's making cupcakes over there, and I'm writing. Sorry, I'm writing something down.
no. Please don't be sorry. It's important to write it down. It gives us time to think and digest and absorb and assimilate and integrate and incorporate.
And I would clean up the kitchen, but it makes too much noise.
Hello, Beena.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. All right, I got it. Yeah.
Ah, brilliant. So, in the same way as we did that, learning to quote ourselves, I hope you and Kay both realize that at some point in the same vein, you know, all the books you watch, the videos you watch, all these things, you're going to have to start doing it yourselves.
We're gonna have to start what?
You have to start making your own books and your own videos and your own stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, in the same spirit as quoting yourself, there comes a point where we need to understand that we are the authors, that we become the authors.
Where did I write that? I think that was in, I think we didn't get that far. Sorry. I think we didn't get that far today, but that was something I said in my repeat backs and takeaways was about being the author of your life rather than,
Yeah.
you know, the actor in the
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. It's essential because otherwise you're always in that searching, seeking phase of existence. And we need to get to the ownership that, hey, I am the authority on me. I am the way, the source of what I get my value and magic and awesome. And I think already Kay a little bit with Katie Bird, but I think when you start actually writing out this in a more structured, coherent form, yourness, your moreness, your isness, your rootness, I think you're in for a big surprise at the plethora of profundity that will explode on you.
wow. Oh, can't wait for that. Plethora of profundity. I like it.
Yeah, you're already doing it. You're already doing it. You're already doing it. You do it every week. You just look at your notes. All you have to do is and that's it. It's already there. Not much needed. Not much needed at all. Just like I said, putting it in, it's already categorized to more or less extent, but just making it picture connectivity. That's really all that's needed. Yeah.
Right.
That's it. There you go. And then you'll be your own authority.
Yeah.
And that's what you're after. That's what you're after, right? To be your own authority, right?
Yes.
It's absolutely a huge big deal what I'm saying. It's a huge big deal. With these two, with writing the book, but there was a large part of me that wasn't teasing either. And so, definitely, in terms of when as a project at some point to take those notes and put them into, well, it'll have to be a book series. Now, a book is not enough. To put them into a book series form, or to use them as scripts to make a series of videos, stuff like that. Doesn't matter. And this is not for anyone else. If you want to, of course, but publish a book. But that's not the point of it. The point is for yourself. You are creating a book that you want to read, that you would like to go over, that you want to see. Maybe get somebody else to read it into an audio book, or to make a video out of it, or whatever. And you'll be astonished at the magic that you get out of it. Or do each other's. Either way, many variations of this, but basically that you have your own magic as a resource for yourself.
Yeah.
It's something. It's something. And to do it in that full professional mode. That's why I say it's really just taking it. You already have all the material there, and for the most part, it needs very little. But just to tweak it, to professionalize it, to put it in that format that you're used to seeing. Because when you see content like a video or a book, it's edited, it's professionalized, right? And that's really the only difference. But you're going to be astonished at the potency of the content that you already possess.
Well, that's probably true.
Oh, I know it is. I hear it every week. I know it is. Right, Beena? It's not just me saying this, right, Beena?
Yeah.
Beena will come in a minute. It's very potent stuff.
Sorry,
Very.
I was listening
Oh, go ahead,
and
Beena.
I was walking, so that's fine. Yes, yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. It's potent stuff, right, Beena? It's potent stuff. And beautiful, too. I got to add that. It's really, really, really not only potent, but it's just beautiful, magical, delightful, enjoyable stuff. It's really cool. I don't think you quite realize how profound, what is in the general context. This is the surprise. And you have a bit more objectivity. You're going to say, man, this is good stuff that I've got here. And you're going to re-look at what you hear from others in a different way. And this will change your relationship to the world and to those who provide value. You're going to realize that you can find that value within easily. It's already there, all of it. All of it. You are a Dr. Shafali. You are a Brené Brown. Both of you.
Absolutely.
More. I would much rather listen to you than to them. Sorry to say.
You haven't listened to either one.
All right. I don't know Dr. Shafali, but I do know Brené Brown. I listen to you every day of the week compared to her. Any day. As cool as she is, I much prefer listening to you. By a long shot. By a long shot.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. It's huge. I mean, Brenna's all right for me, but doesn't rock my world. But listening to you guys, this rocks my world. It's huge. It's huge.
Renee is no better or worse than either of us.
That's
because
right.
She comes.
Yeah, I didn't say better or worse. I just said preferable.
No, I'm just thinking this is a really
Yeah.
interesting example of
Yeah.
what we were saying earlier about the different, differences
Different.
between all of us. That
Not
you
better
know,
or worse.
we
but
are
different.
all part of the same.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is what I'm aiming at here with this perspective. Value in the outside. There is that the default automatic, without even thinking about it, habitual ascription of betterness, of moreness, of deepness, of wisdom, of understanding, of sensibility, etc., to others. And for the most part, most of our lives, that was accurate, but no longer.
Right.
It also
That's my point.
universal right and wrong.
Right.
That
That's what I
there's a
was just
standard
thinking.
of that.
Right.
And,
That's what I was just
A
thinking.
universal what?
right and wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like a
Exactly.
standard of
Exactly.
wrong, and
Exactly.
we fit it in varying degrees. And
Right.
that's not really
No,
what we're talking about.
no.
Exactly. You're tapping into universal moreness, universal understanding, universal sensibility, universal discernment. Right and wrongness doesn't even enter into the picture. It's not part of the conversation, right?
Absolutely. I agree. I agree completely.
And the idea of
Very cool. Very, very much.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I mean, I am keen for. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. No.
Mom said something about and hierarchy, and I was just saying that we were listening
Yes.
to guys, what's her name, Sonia Renee Taylor, where she was talking about she was calling society or the system, the system. She was comparing that to a ladder and saying that the system is a ladder, and we have this completely false imagined concept that there is a system that exists in ladder form, and that we have to be climbing up, and where we are on the ladder dictates our importance and whatever. And that when we realize that the ladder is false, the entire system collapses. And that for me is the whole right. When we realize that we are all made of the same elements of perfection, there is no such thing.
Exactly.
There is no such thing as
exactly.
of the same type of perfection. Then that whole concept of better and worse and hierarchy and relative superiority completely disappears.
Yes.
kind of like
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's really important stuff. I mean, I am very keen for you guys to realize that you are authority. You are life authorities, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
I still think it's a good idea to put in something different. I mean, in the sense of different arrangement.
Right.
Somebody over here has
Well,
a
and that's
different.
why I was saying, appropriateness. Like it all is rooted in appropriateness. That in someone else's unique arrangement, there may be something about that we go, oh wow, that is a lot more appropriate a way to do this than I'm doing currently, or this is a way of whatever. And that's great. It doesn't mean that they are inherently better than you. It just means this is a more appropriate way for me of doing this. How that I get to see I appreciate that for its appropriateness, and I can take on elements of that myself, and I can rearrange and try this out, and then rearrange again and try this out. And
or you can think of it as tools that you're adding to your toolbox. I was just in Home Depot. There's no tool that's better than another.
Right.
They're all different things.
Right.
different, it's appropriate to use a different tool. So when we see others, I say, wow, that's a way of doing it. Okay.
Well, and that's, that's what I was thinking.
In a particular circumstance.
That's what I was thinking of earlier when I was talking about
Good.
lead and
Right.
gold and the appropriateness of each, that there are times where lead is a much more appropriate element for doing whatever it is you're trying to do. There are times when gold is a much more appropriate. It just is according to circumstance. There
And
are
it's-
times.
We're the ones that have attached relative value.
Right.
And
Right.
the value is not even based on appropriateness. It's,
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
That's the magic of the philosophy of appropriateness.
Right.
yes.
It's so magical. It's so cool. Very, very, very cool.
Absolutely. I
The
agree.
more tools we have, the better it is for us. Because somebody said, Cornelius actually, they said, what do I need awareness for?
Hmm.
Why? What does it benefit me? Awareness gives us a greater ability to be more appropriate in the
Right.
moment, or just to be appropriate. Right. So awareness enhances our ability to be appropriate.
Right.
Oh, okay. All right. I can see that as useful.
Yeah.
He wanted to know what the usefulness of awareness was.
Right. Right.
Will you go over expectations real quick again, please, Erica?
Yeah. Just a second. I'm writing something down.
Oh. Oh, your hair looks nice, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
That's very nice,
Okay. You said you wanted me to go over what again?
Expectations. That's real quick.
Well, let's see. I think I started with recognizing that expectations are at the root of a lot of our beliefs, our behaviors. That's kind of one of the critical ways that we move through life is based on expectation. That is kind of one of our survival instincts is to analyze the things around us, to recognize patterns, to put those together, and to form expectations of some future occurrence based on past probability. And so it's not, I think there is such a thing as appropriate expectation. It is appropriate.
Oh.
Appropriate to observe our surroundings and pay attention to and create expectations for the purpose of being appropriate. I think that's how what is appropriate is through expectation and through this observation of past occurrence and likelihood of something else happening. So expectations in and of themselves, I think it's kind of like ego. Expectations serve a very particular purpose, and it is an appropriate.
They're an energy management tool. Yes.
Right. They serve a very particular and appropriate purpose. The trouble is, again, just like with ego, when we become completely mired in that one thing and allow it to grow beyond what is appropriate. When we live our entire lives solely based on expectations, instead of allowing room for moreness, that's when we get ourselves into trouble. So having appropriate expectations is important, but really the appropriate form of that is, I think I kind of started thinking about appropriate expectations as being a part of making choices. That we make a choice based in large part on assessing what's happening around us, using past experience to form an expectation of what we think may be the best choice going forward based on what we've observed, what we've found. But the trust that comes in at the end is leading for,
Like in 1 minute, sorry.
whoops, I don't know, I heard 1 minute, so I'm guessing something came up.
Is there more powdered sugar in this?
It's
I'm listening, but I'll be back in a minute.
okay. Sorry, I completely forgot what I was saying.
It's appropriate to have some expectations.
Yeah, it's appropriate to have some expectations, but the important thing is to leave room for moreness and to not get mired in this. I think for me, one of the big pitfalls of expectations is when we take expectations as
Rules.
well, yeah, as 100% definitive, and that, I expect that this is going to happen, and if there are any deviations from this, then it's not good and it's not appropriate. My expectation is what is right, and anything that falls outside of that is wrong. And so if we set expectations with an understanding that there is always moreness outside of that expectation, and that moreness is rooted in good, then we don't get into these cycles of behavior and anxiety and all these negative feelings when what we expect doesn't come about. So, if the moreness that we account for that falls outside of our expectation is one of goodness, then we don't get completely discombobulated and thrown off track and everything when something that we expect doesn't happen the way we expect it to. So, yeah.
That is the trouble with expectations.
For sure. Okay, and I have a couple of sessions that I wanted to try to get to as well. I don't know where Syl is at with all of this, but I'm gonna get my sessions loaded up here. Okay, there we go.
I was listening. I was thinking that, for me, power conception there would be fluid conceptions.
Right.
Fluid expectations, I mean.
Yeah.
Right. To have fluid expectations. Expectations themselves aren't a problem, but when they're rigid and narrow and limited, that's when they're a problem.
Absolutely.
But what if we expect moreness?
Right. Absolutely.
Does it not then become something special? Sure. And also just in a more more mundane setting, I expect things to happen. I expect the guy to stop at the stop sign, but so to have open and fluid expectations.
Right. Absolutely.
This is a very big deal. And the expectation of variation, the expectation of perfection, the expectation of excitement, of fun, of wonder, of delight. Yeah.
Right. For sure. I agree.
Yeah. So expectations are a powerful tool.
Right.
You can leverage like everything else as appropriate. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You were going to do something and I didn't quite get what you were going to do.
Oh, I was just saying I have a couple of sessions.
Yeah, now you wanted to shift to something.
I had a couple of sessions loaded up that I was going to try to go over in this.
Let's hear.
Got them loaded up now. Ooh, it's lagging. I think you're just saying ah, but like Beena said earlier, it sounds like a whole sentence because it's dragging it out. I can't tell if it's back or not. Yeah. I think you're back. I don't know. I can't tell. I can hear background noise.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure that it caught back.
Oh, do I have a lot of background noise?
No,
Oh, no, I'm here.
I just heard little things, but I was just trying to make sure it was caught up. Okay, so we left off at.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just listening.
Okay. We left off at module 10, session 5, which is ethical emptiness. And I said a really key point from this session was the last slide, which said, when we understand that the BSer psychology hasn't matured past that childish stage of wanting whatever it wants, no matter what, then much becomes clear. They've learned that much of what they want is not okay, but they've also learned they can manipulate their wants and desires into being okay if they can get others to agree with them. Yesers love the myth of agreement as it enables them. So I was saying that for me, again, I see no better example of this than Trump right now. And I said it reminds me of it was interesting that this point brought up this being sort of a childish stage, because it reminds me of children, kind of going back to what I was saying the other day of, I think I said this on the call, that when habit replacement or any kind of behavior is forced on you, when you don't have the awareness for yourself of why that may be an appropriate action to take, it doesn't stick, right? As soon as you're given the opportunity to go do what you really want to be doing, you go back to doing that again, because you don't have the awareness of why that action that you're sort of being forced into taking is appropriate and good. And I think we see that a lot with really young children who maybe don't have the understanding of why what they're being asked to do is an appropriate thing. And so they kind of consistently push the boundaries of what it is that they're being asked to do, because that's kind of their way of coming to an understanding of why that's appropriate. They're pushing those boundaries because for them, they don't have an understanding yet of why that may be inappropriate, or if it is an appropriate thing for them. But the childish side of that, and the difference there for me is, whereas with really, really young children, where they just don't, it's just an ignorance thing at that point, they just don't have the knowledge. Lovely. And we lost him again.
It's hard to have a complete.
I know, I'm like, I don't want to keep going, because then I don't want him to be stuck in the middle of a conversation that he's lost part of. Let's see if this happens. Okay, are you back? I don't see it connecting to audio. Ooh, there's four of us now.
Wow.
There we go. All right, you back? I can't hear you. I can see your lips moving. That's really weird. It's lighting up like there's noise, but I don't hear anything.
That is weird.
Is my goofed? I don't know. That's really weird. Okay, there goes the other one. So hopefully that will fix things. That sounds promising.
There we go. Now I hear you. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
That was very
Strange,
strange.
but true.
So anyway, for me, the difference there is specifically about this childish, like not childlike, but childish stage of wanting. It's not about a lack of understanding per se. There's a different take on it there, and that any crack of inconsistency in boundary or rule enforcement is a weak point that can be exploited by a BMN. And for BSers, this is myth of agreement. They may be told that their wants are indulgent, but through tricks and manipulation, they make other people want them too, or find others who have similar indulgences. And this makes it, quote, okay, because it forces a crack in what is right and good. And the exercise for this, module was indulgence. What is it? And give some examples, personal or not. And I said, for me, indulgence is deliberately doing something that you know is wrong. Online dictionaries have a fairly mild definition. I think we talked about this when Joe went through this session, that I looked up, okay, what does indulgence mean according to the dictionary? And it basically just said giving in.
Oh, what did I say?
Yikes. Okay. I don't know. Yeah.
Giving into what?
Oh, there we go. The online dictionaries had a fairly mild definition. It was basically just giving in to one's desires. So it doesn't differentiate, doesn't say one's inappropriate desires, which for me is how indulgence, giving in to one's inappropriate desires. So it was interesting to me that the dictionary doesn't, it has what I would consider a fairly mild definition.
Yeah, I agree.
Not just giving in to your desires. And I think it said something, it gave examples of like, oh, I'm going to indulge myself with a warm bath tonight and whatever. So it was kind of like, it had sort of a neutral connotation to it. Well, it could be bad.
Yeah.
For me, indulgence specifically carries a negative connotation.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, to me, indulgence is a transgression against my sobriety.
Yeah.
It's a transgression against my impeccability.
Right. Doing what I know.
So,
yeah.
Exactly.
But in the case of the BSer, I think indulgence specifically giving into one's inappropriate desires, the things which we know are not right for us and others, but are easier than doing what is right. Basically taking a moral shortcut. An extreme example might be stealing money from someone else rather than earning the money yourself when it is absolutely within your capability and opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
And then looking at the opposite of infantile desires and their justification, what would that be in the context of a together person? I said, I think the opposite of infantile desires and their justification would be appropriate desires, things which have been thought through and deemed appropriate, impeccable desires in other words.
Yeah.
A together person may absolutely have infantile desires, but rather than immediately acting on them, thinks them through and bases their choices and actions on their impeccability. And then list some choices.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry, I think it's delayed. I didn't mean to cut you off, but is pausing for
No, no,
work.
I was just saying yeah. I was just saying yes.
Good deal. Okay, list some choices you have made as to what you want, which are not indulgent choices, but more choices of moreness, which you have chosen by yourself for yourself. And I said, the first thing that comes to mind is my decision to quit my job. Another is my choice to thoroughly consider being a parent before jumping into this experience. Another was my choice to start Way of Impeccability, my choice to seek out help from Kathy, and my choice to engage in things which bring me joy, like guitar, ballet, chicken, etc. All of the things that I have started engaging in that bring me joy and excitement. I'm sure there are many more, but I feel like I have made, when I was really trying to think of choices that I made for myself, by myself, that had really been thought through, and I came to, this is appropriate for me. I feel like the vast majority of those choices have happened within the last year, 2 years, year and a half, something like that. So most of the ones I could think of were fairly recent.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. So session 6 is corrupting justification. And my repeat back takeaway from this was, I pulled out a quote from, again, the last slide of the session, which is, good people often succumb to BS logic when they become immersed in some focus or other they believe in. And I said, I see this so much today, in particular with single issue voters. People become so completely immersed and focused on one single issue that they believe in that they ignore the blatant horrors perpetrated by a person just because they support a single belief that this person agrees with. If all we care about is, I think there was an example from this session about cleaning up an island. And so I was using that example to say, if all we care about is cleaning up the island at any cost, then we become okay with polluting the rest of the world to do so. The last slide also really resonated with me. It is amazing what people can get away with as long as they get others to agree or appear to agree, or just not outrightly disagree with them. Good people who believe they are good people who believe they are being good by being agreeable and not rocking the boat get sucked into BS schemes because of the myth of agreement. And the last slide was, good people are also vulnerable to the myth of agreement. They very much can fall prey to this belief that if everybody thinks it's good, it is. All manner of horrors in history have been perpetrated in the name of this myth. The idea that agreement constitutes right is just BS. Superstitions. We quickly see the lie and nonsense of this belief. I think that's very true. The first question in the exercise was, how did the idea that if others believe it, it must be true come about way back? And I think we talked about my answer a little bit. Okay. Anyway, we talked about my answer to this.
Hey, Joe.
Oh, there he is. Okay. I don't know if you heard him. He said hi back. So we talked about my answer to this question when Joe was going through his answers. So how did the idea that if others believe it, it must be true come about way back? And I said, My guess is that this comes from way back, as we see this same logic in the animal kingdom often with communal species. When one member of the group tries something, the rest all try it too, if it's successful. In a group, the one who stands out and does something different from the norm or the rest of the group is most at risk. If you don't follow along with the rest of the group and do what everyone else is doing, you risk being kicked out and having to survive on your own. What's most interesting to me, though, is that often the ones who do behave differently often end up advancing the rest of the group by finding a better way of doing things. And then the next question, which I didn't ever find a good example.
What's that last one, please?
Whoops, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, that cut out again. I think you said something about the last.
Say the last thing.
Say the last thing again. Okay, so I was saying in group communal species, generally speaking, the one who stands out and does something different from the rest of the group is seen as sort of threatening because it puts the rest of the group at risk because you're standing out, you're doing something different, you're bringing attention to yourself and the rest of the group. So if you consistently do things differently than everyone else, you risk being kicked out and having to survive on your own. But what is most interesting to me is that often the ones who do things differently, who behave differently, often end up advancing the rest of the group by finding a better way of doing things. So it's the ones that do dare to do things differently that often end up finding a more efficient way to do something. And then as soon as the others see that what they're doing is beneficial, then everyone else jumps on that train and starts doing it too. I think it's caught up. Just making sure there wasn't anything else. Okay, so the next.
Yeah. No, keep going.
The next question, which I never did find a good representation of, was what idea or belief, which is physically represented if you just look around you, do you believe because everyone else or others believe it? And I never did find a good representation of something that I could directly say the only reason that I believe this is true is because everyone else does. So I came back to this question a couple times at different times and was sort of trying to watch for something, and I haven't found a good example of it yet. But I'm being on the lookout for that.
Cool.
And so, okay, so the next question was, give an example or a few, if possible, of societal good, which isn't really. And I said, I'm not sure that this is a great example, but Mom and I were talking, and I answered this question a long time ago. Mom and I were talking earlier about schools, and I mentioned that I realize now that I don't agree with the fundamental way most schools approach teaching. Teaching kids to believe that everything their teacher shares with them is fact, and that they're rewarded when they repeat back the beliefs that they're taught, rather than encouraging kids to think for themselves and come to their own beliefs. We as a society believe that parroting the beliefs of our parents, church leaders, teachers, etc., is good and right, and questioning and thinking for ourselves is dangerous and bad. I think that is exactly how Henry became what he is by, yeah, we had that discussion the other day.
Yeah.
He just parrots the beliefs of everyone around him instead of actually being encouraged to think for himself.
That is true.
Ooh, sorry, can you say that again? Still not
He said, who's Henry?
legible. Who's Henry? Is that what you said? Okay. Henry is my Joe's nephew, his sister's child. And he's a very, very interesting study. He is, I was sharing with Mom, we were having this discussion, seems like forever ago now, that Henry is 7, I think now, maybe 8. And it's very interesting because I actually see a lot of parallels between him and me when I was a kid. I think I was always labeled as like a gifted kid, which Henry is as well. But I think in particular, I was labeled that way because when I was younger, especially, I had a specific gift for memorization. And I think not just memorization, but recognizing, sort of being discerning and recognizing what was most appropriate to repeat back, recognizing what really mattered to people that I cared about, and using my really good memory to parrot back these, what seemed to be like very advanced concepts that were being shared with me. And well, I understand, but I'm just saying for the context of this, that I think in many ways, what was labeled for me as like, oh my gosh, she's so smart, she's so gifted, in many really, I mean, there was a lot to it. And I'm not saying that I don't think that I had, that I was doing things that were advanced, that were unique, whatever. But I think in many ways, a lot of what I was being praised for was just the ability to memorize things very well that were being shared with me, and then to discern what was most important to repeat back to the people that were sharing these things with me, because that got me praise. When I repeated back what the people that I cared about were sharing with me, it was like, oh, yeah, yes, yeah. And so I got very good at repeating things that didn't necessarily make sense to me, but it was what everybody was telling me. And so I would just, repeat these things back over and over and over. And for me, it wasn't really about critical thinking or is this what you really believe, and can you explain to me why, you believe this or whatever. It was just like, oh yeah, I've been told this and I've been told this and I've been told this, and I can memorize that and I can repeat this back. And that having the memory abilities that I did was something that was very beneficial for me from a school capacity, because in many ways, I think that is how our schools are structured. You get better grades when you can remember all of these things for a test. You pick the right answer, you say the right thing. If you can remember all of these things, then there you go. And it's basically parroting back all of the things that your teachers have told you are true, rather than being asked, you come up, you don't just take what I'm saying as fact, figure out for yourself what you believe and what makes sense to you and how do you think about this and, you know, whatever. And I see a lot of that in Henry. I think, you know, he is very good at memorizing things. I think he's very good at repeating things back in the way that they were said to him. And, you know, I do think he's smart and I do think he's able to string concepts together. I mean, it's not literally just parroting back. He is combining concepts and, you know, he's doing a lot of additional things. But I can speak from personal experience in that context that eventually you reach a point where you realize, you know, I am not, yeah, like I'm not really thinking for myself. This isn't really, you know, this isn't what everybody thinks it is. And so it is detrimental. I mean, it does cause problems because eventually you reach a point where you realize like, this is only going to get me so far. And I see a lot of that with Henry. I see a lot of the, you know, he has a lot of perfectionistic tendencies. He gets extremely upset when he makes mistakes. I think he's being held to an extremely high standard of look at how brilliant this kid is and, you know, he can do no wrong and he should be doing this and he should be doing that. And the whole going back to the expectations and potential and all of that, that's a dangerous road to walk for a child. It leads to a lot of disappointment. I think, you know, disappointment in yourself and feeling like you're disappointed by people and not living up to your potential. And it was interesting to me that I was realizing the other day when we went through this, that although I don't think it's intentional, I think in many ways that is how our education system is set up, is to, you know, I mean, that is what basically all of our testing that we do on all of these really young children is doing.
Yeah.
It's not saying, you know, I want you to show me that you are thinking for yourself and that you know how to think critically and that you're questioning and, you know, I want to understand how you came to this and how does this make sense to you? It's like, do you remember what I told you? And can you remember that, you know, this is this and you believe that I told you that and I told you it's right, so you just believe it.
So no awareness, no discernment, no understanding, no ADU, right?
I think we as a society tend to think that that is good and right, that, okay, you know, someone that I respect and trust has told me that this is how it is, and I am being good if I say, yes, I agree, and I'm not questioning things, and, you know, here we go. I'm just going to repeat this back to you, and this is going to be my mantra. And I don't believe that that really is good. I think it's an inappropriate application of goodness. Mm-hmm.
Very cool, Erica. Very, very, very cool. Powerful stuff.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I have reflected on that. I feel like often Henry is a really interesting, he and I certainly are not the same person, and he has a lot of different and unique challenges, I think, that are different from, I think he provides a really interesting view for me into an aspect of younger me. And I have thought a lot about that and about how, and I think I had shared this with you guys a long time ago, that I often felt when I was younger like an imposter of some sort. That it was like, you know, everybody thinks that I'm so smart and everybody's like, oh, you know, you're so good at this. And I literally have no idea what I'm doing. Like I am not huge effort to do this. Like I'm just doing things the way that I would normally do it. And I keep being told like, oh my gosh. And I kept thinking like, when is everybody going to figure out that I have no idea Why
Yeah.
I'm doing this? And, you know, they keep expecting me to do these awesome things. Like, when are they going to figure out that I'm a total fraud and I have no idea, you know, why this is happening? I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
I'm great at this at all. And I don't really know why this is happening. And I can definitely see that in him. And I think that's where for me, I think that's where a lot of the perfectionist, never wanting to make a mistake thing came from, because it was like, if I ever make a mistake, then people are going to figure
You're exposed. Yeah.
people are going to figure this out. And then I have to explain that, you know, I have no idea what's going on. So I see that in him, and I think it's an interesting, I think it is an interesting and sort of unique issue that comes out of what could be and probably is an appropriate ability, you know, an ability to remember, an ability to discern and to figure out what is appropriate for other people. I mean, that certainly is a useful and valuable tool, but this context of not questioning things and of repeating things back and all of that, it becomes really detrimental.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
That's very powerful. And let me ask you now. So when you were a kid, this perspective, you felt then that they were mistaken. The view that you know, sort of others had of you. Yeah.
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 think-
To some extent. To some extent, at any rate. Do you still feel that way?
I think I think it's interesting.
I'll put you on the spot a bit.
Yes and no, I guess. I think I'm trying to think of
I'd say anybody attending a Zoom session will say, see, I was right all along.
Exactly.
to say what.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Kay.
And
Most
that's
appropriate peanut gallery commentary. Very cool.
absolutely true.
So I
Some
will
of us
say,
Yeah.
no, I know.
So
And I'm trying to figure out how to encapsulate what I'm thinking. But I think, I mean, I guess, again, I think it just comes down to inappropriate application of goodness. I think I did possess and exude something interesting and unique and powerful and appropriate. It was being kind of attributed maybe to the wrong thing, or being focused on and
Yes. It was focused on memory, not on moreness.
It was being looked at in sort of an inappropriate way or focused on an inappropriate way. And so rather than saying, you know, look at these amazing things that you're doing, and it has nothing to do with, you know, you don't have that's what makes it cool, is that you don't know how this is working. You know, it's just completely innate, and that's cool and that's amazing. And let's think about how this is valuable and useful, how you can use this appropriately, and, you know, why this is good and whatever. And instead it was like, oh, you know, look at this really cool thing, which is, again, like the potential, you know, this is going to give you so much potential. Look at all of these incredible, amazing things that you are now going to be expected to do with yourself and in your life, because you have this really interesting ability. And for me, that was like an immense amount of pressure of, I have no idea how, therefore I have absolutely no idea it will disappear tomorrow, and I have no way to, you know, bring it back or whatever.
Right.
I mean, there is,
you know, I do agree that and yes, they come from goodness, but they are some of the stuff doesn't help.
I caught a little
Sorry,
bit.
Kay.
no,
No, it's fine.
no,
Just-
I
I
have
was just saying,
I have something to say about this, however. Okay.
Go ahead. Go
Um, in addition to having a great memory and being able to repeat back things or whatever, he also, at a very young age, which will not surprise you at all, had this really amazing creative ability. I mean, and, you know, young children are not really critical thinkers. I mean, their brains aren't even developed to that point. But
Correct. Correct.
at her level, he had and showed signs of this really amazing. She
Yeah.
did amazing things besides just repeating that. And I mean, I still have, you know, still have some of her work from when she was little. Kindergarten was an amazing.
Wow.
And I have this this little thing that's one of my most prized possessions. She came
The
home.
girl.
Yeah, the girl. She came home from, and she made two things. She came home from kindergarten, and she would always come home from school because, and when she'd get home, she would a lot of times go in and recreate the activities that her teacher had them do, and which, you know, in and of itself, you know, and I was just studying to be a teacher at that time, and I would look at this stuff and go, oh my, I have a really unusual child. But one of the things that she did was Mrs. Reeves, her teacher, had them, and a lot of people do this. It was a study of probability, really. I mean, that's supposedly what it was studying, not really. But they would have a graph, a blank graph, with like the numbers 1 through 6 across the bottom.
Sorry, can you just repeat from when she came back from school? She did what when she came back from school?
Come home from school, and she would recreate the activities that her teacher had them do during that day.
Oh,
She created.
wow, wow. So takeaways, repeat backs.
Oh yeah. One of them was a graph. They would have a blank graph with the numbers 1 through 6 across the bottom, and they would have a die, and they would toss the die, and whatever number came up, they would color in the square.
About the die. I remember
And so you
that
would.
now.
It was supposed to be about probability, but for kindergarten, really, it was more about
Matching
sabotaging your numbers.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so
Oh, wow.
she goes home and she freehand draws this graph, and then she takes she's laughing. She takes like a piece of paper, just a plain blank piece of paper, and she cuts it and tapes it together to make a cube. And she
Wow.
she's 5. Okay. She takes
Wow.
takes a marker and puts the dots, you know, 1 through 6 dots in the right place on this her homemade die, and then she repeats the activity. What kid does that? Then she also took a piece of paper, and this is a piece of leftover paper when computer paper had the little
Perforations, yeah. But, yeah.
Called that printer dot matrix.
I don't know.
Printer?
Anyway,
Yeah, dot basics paper, yeah.
she took those little pieces off and she cut out, and I can't remember if she taped or glued
Tape, I'm pretty sure.
this. She made a girl out, and it was like a
Wow.
3D girl, and she had
Wow.
little
The
dot
things,
things were her hair, and she had
Hey, wow.
and then she painted it and or marker, I can't remember, and you know, did this all. I'm like, you know, I mean,
Brilliant. It just profoundly and deeply misunderstood the Erica Jane, that's all.
she was.
And I agree, and I recognize that, but I think,
and I see what you're saying, that you were praised for repeating
exactly,
that. And I get that.
and
I
that I think was the thing, was it was like that was what got me and not necessarily at home, but just
Right.
in
No, I
school, in
understand.
the outer
And
world.
I'm kidding about
That
being,
was
you know,
what-
sensitive about this, but
That was what got me the most
attention
attention
yes,
was
positive
was
attention,
when it was like,
yes.
oh my gosh, look at this, you can recite this whole thing and
she
you can
did.
say
She
all
was
this stuff.
amazing.
And I was like, okay, you know, but I mean,
So-
I had nothing, and it was, I remember
Yeah.
you brought up the spelling
Yeah,
thing.
spelling. She was amazing. At
Spelling, I have literally never in my life ever had to practice at spelling.
And me neither.
My brain
Wow.
just works in a way that I think it's like a visual learning
It's a
thing that
visual
I
memory.
can visualize the word, I can recite off the letters. I
Me too.
never have to practice spelling. And my teachers would make this huge big deal out of, oh, you know, she gets 100 on her test spelling every time. They would have me lead the spelling test in
Right.
class sometimes. And it was this huge ordeal. And I'm like, I literally don't know what to do with this because
Right.
I'm not,
Yeah.
yeah, this is not an effort thing.
She didn't have to really work at anything academic until
Right. So if we zoom out here and we look at remedy, I would say the remedy would be nobody asked you.
Nobody asked me what.
probably that's what you should have said to people who were praising you.
What?
Nobody asked you. Oops.
I think we lost you.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. Nobody asked you what's going on.
Oh,
What's going on? Okay.
right.
If they'd asked you, they said, Erica Jane, you know, what's going on inside you? They didn't pay attention. They didn't hear you. They didn't even ask you for your perspective. You would have said, but, you know, you're making a big deal out of this, but it's not a big deal for me. It just happens.
Right. Right.
And it puts a pressure on me and puts a stress on me. So you would have shared your perspective and they would have changed what's going on. But yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And, you know, to emphasize memory like that, innate memory, there is nothing in it for the kids. Like, I didn't do anything. I just remembered it. But, you know, you didn't make an effort. Okay, the doll thing, fair enough. You made an effort. This was you doing something, right? Or the graph thing. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. But to me, I always saw your innate insightfulness, your innate discernment,
We lost you again.
your innate sobriety, and your view perspective. Where did you lose me?
Innate sobriety, I think, was the last thing I heard.
Yeah, your innate sobriety and your innate understanding and your innate connectivity to overview perspective.
Interesting. Yeah.
In other words, I always saw aspects. Yeah. To show you an innate philosopher, really.
Well,
There you go.
yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very
You know,
interesting.
but we adding to that the psychology to understand the psychology too. It's very important.
For sure. For sure.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just about to say, if we're going to go for
Before we go, add some big deal to add on. Yeah. Brilliant.
okay. I heard before we go,
So,
you
so real quick, just to that I really feel if we understand things to the very end, the way you are sharing your understandings every time we're on Zoom, like your understanding about expectation, for instance, they're the most recent one now, right? When we understand things to that depth, I feel it carries over in life now, right? I can't say how or why, but I really feel this because I came with some understandings, and the only logic that I can think is that these carried over somehow, right? And I do connect stuff that I started with to where I'm at now, and it all connects. At any rate, whether or not this is true, I feel it could be. And you know, like you, when you understand to that depth, you reprogram your operating system so that when you reboot, you come back and the operating system has changed.
right.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, it's not not stuff that gets lost every time you reboot. Doesn't sit on the hard drive and all of that. Chip, as it were, very fundamentally. Now, this understanding of PSP, this I feel critically essential. Because when we come back, we have to go through the PSP paradigm again, that whole superiority paradigm. We have to go through all that nonsense again, yeah? So if we understand it on a root fundamental level, next time we won't go through it in the same way because we understand it fully and we'll be able to unhook from it right from the get-go pretty much.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
At least as a possibility. I mean, I feel this very deeply, that these deep capital U understandings fundamentally change us, and there's a carryover effect on this.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
simultaneous, I don't know, but I feel that deeper understanding, it changes things in a very deep and profound and significant way that really matters. Magical goes.
I think that was for Beena.
Where'd Beena go?
Sorry, I don't know what.
I want to hear from Beena before we go.
Oh, okay. So this is really interesting. And Erica, what you shared about your memory and your ability to memorize things was being really in focused. This is not only from others, but also sometimes I feel that, this is just my perspective, that when we, especially in our childhood, when we get something interesting and easy and quick and somehow profound, our brain also emphasize more on that. So by just emphasizing on that ability, you might be also cueing others to see that in a more focused way. So it becomes innate to you that because it was easily available to your disposal, that okay, that you can memorize things. It is about energy management also.
Right.
We all want to save our energy instead of going in effort and doing something and brainstorming and all that. Why not? I can memorize. This is what I can do right there, quick and easy and efficient. So this is what your mind, and this is natural. So it becomes innate to you to just switch to that ability more and first, instead of doing all of the things. So it doesn't mean that you didn't have all of the things or abilities at your disposal at that time, but because it was easy, it was energy efficient, and it was shining because people were focusing or also on that, and you were getting benefits because you were actually getting results. Like, okay, I can memorize things, and okay, that's it. So this is, your mind was also working in that way. It is not that these things were limited, other things were not there or limited or less. It is just that the focus was, subconscious mind was focusing more on that because it was energy efficient. That's it. It doesn't mean that, because again, coming back to the first point, when you were discussing, that we all have everything inside us. So you also had everything inside you, but that thing was because it was energy efficient and it's quick and wow, and fun. Because it is learning and memorizing thing is fun in the childhood.
Especially when
Yeah, when we grow older, then okay, brainstorming and all these things become fun. But in the childhood, learning and memorizing is amazing skill. We all want to do that. This is how child mimics everything. This is how we grow up. So this is, I feel that the whole story was just that your mind was energy efficient also, because it was an intelligent mind at that time too. So it was switching over more to that ability, which is energy efficient, quick, getting results and everything. So that's why. And everything else was there, sitting and resting and chilling out, that, okay, we will do that brainstorm later on in our.
Interesting. Yeah. We don't ever stop to ask children what's going on with them. And you know, when you think of all the kids, whether you're being told you are intelligent and wonderful or not, either way, there's always pressure on kids, and
Absolutely.
nobody ever listens to
Absolutely. And that is an interesting thing that came up in my session
them.
with week, which I'll have to
Amazing.
share. I'll have to share later because there's more to that story. But that was a really interesting point that came up with her this week, was
Oh, good. Oh,
not,
good. Okay, I
not
want to hear.
listening to or really considering the thoughts and opinions and beliefs of children.
Yeah. That's why I was saying, you know, when you prove now and authority, it's going to be transformative.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, we should jump off of here so that we
Right?
can get our,
We shall say goodbye to authority.
whoops. Okay, I think you're back.
Goodbye, Erica. Goodbye, Kay. I just love this. So brilliant. Yeah, I'm back. I'm listening. I don't know. I don't know. Okay.
Oh dear.
See you next time.
Fantastic.
Well,
Very fantastic.
Bill is off of work tomorrow, so he will be on at his usual time. So
Okay.
Excellent.
there he is.
Excellent.
Catch up.
Excellent. Excellent. Excellent.
Oh,
Okay.
Bye bye. Bye bye, Erica Jane. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. It's wave
Okay.
goodbye, and you can see. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Kay. As well. Thank God. Beena, I mean, this isn't my phone. I'm sitting here, you know, connected to